Hey guys, my name's Nova, this is Film Express, and today we're going to be talking about the new Alejandro Inarritu film, Bardo, or A False Chronicles of a Handful of Truths. Now guys, I was really hoping this would be one of those unique experiences that's a bit of like a mainstream art house type of film, you know, like Tree of Life. I have to say this is another one of my huge disappointments in 2022. This is going to be a very divisive film. You're either going to connect with it or not at all. I find myself on the side of the fence that's very critical of something like this. Feel like there's a bit of an irony behind this film. Inarritu's been subject to many criticisms over the years because of his films kind of being pretentious and kind of being out of touch with different sensibilities. But in trying to attack those criticisms and defend himself, he's kind of fallen into that same trapping all over again. I'm just gonna get right into it, and you guys can skip this review if you think it's gonna be too critical for you. You know, me personally, I'm starting to get really tired of these directors' biopics. You know, we've had so many at this point, whether it was Rome, Belfast, The Fabelmans, Armageddon Time. I find most of these fall really flat. This has to be the worst one, unfortunately. Like, I really think it is. Now, don't get me wrong, there were a couple of really spectacular visual sequences. They take your breath away. They leave you in awe. But for each one of those, there was about 2 or 3 moments right after that kind of feel boring, pretentious, and pointless. And it's so self-indulgent. Like, this is the most self-indulgent film of the year. On one side of the coin, I have to say that I found a lot of ideas in this film were explored much better in a game called Death Stranding by Hideo Kojima. I'm just talking visual ideas here and overall themes and motifs that you would see. Death Stranding did a lot of what is in here, but much better. This is the type of film that you can compare to the likes of 8.5 by Federico Fellini, or The Diving Bell and the Butterfly by Julian Schnabel, even All That Jazz, you know, the Fosse musical that came out in the 70s, which is one of the best musicals I've ever seen, and it's just a fantastic film. A lot of ideas from these movies are basically recycled and re-explored here in different ways with a different like cultural and social context, but again, it's very recycled. This is the type of film that's basically a chore to get through. You know, you're gonna spend most of your time trying to analyze the meandering scenes and the very kind of brash imagery that you're getting, absorb it all and be critical of it, and in doing so, that's kind of very exhausting. You know, something like Tree of Life has a very meandering type of vibe to it, but that's like poetry in motion. You know, you're watching something that has layers and layers and layers of depth. Whatever layers of depth here in Bardo, they are very surface level. You know, it's like shallow as a kiddie pool, as I like to say. I have to say, the lighting, the camera work, it's all very good. On a technical standpoint, it's very unique, but also it can get very tiring because the whole film is shot on a super wide lens. It's lacking any originality, you know, like the first few times that you see this wide lens, it kind of adds to the aesthetic, but as the film goes on, they don't change that focal length once. You know, it's all shot from in a very wide angle, you know, like around 20 millimeters or so, just if I can try to get a little bit technical there. With that being said, you know, that it doesn't have any variety in terms of visual aesthetic. There's not many, if any, close-ups at all. Everything is shot from a distance and very wide, and to me that was just tiring, you know, to see that throughout the film constantly over and over again. The music in this film was extremely poor in my opinion. There was like this really goofy, loud polka trombone type music that just almost ruined every scene where it showed up. There was this really silly subplot involving Amazon, you know, buying a chunk of the states in California. And, you know, I get the commentary there about how, you know, industrialization is affecting the Mexicans and the US. There's a lot of interesting ideas about that in terms of Inarritu's sense of belonging to both the States and Mexico. You know, he's kind of having this survivor's guilt about having gotten out of Mexico and been super successful and being able to live his dreams. And then in that sense, the film really explores that survivor's guilt because he feels like he can't belong in the States and he can't belong in Mexico, and he's kind of torn in between. That in itself is a pretty good idea, but I feel like the irony there is also lost because you have this survivor's guilt that you've made it and you've gotten rich, but you're not contributing back to your country and giving to those people who are basically in that same position that you were in. So I find that just very out of touch, very selfish, again, very self-indulgent. He basically thinks that these issues are worth exploring in an effort to get us to empathize and sympathize with him, but unfortunately it just makes it seem again more like he's trying to commercialize his pain, his suffering, his confusion, the things that he's dealt with, instead of trying to help anybody else maybe kind of get out of that situation as well, or better the lives of the people around him. You could easily cut about 40 to 60 minutes out of this film and nothing would have changed, honestly. Like, there were so many pointless scenes that, you know, they might have looked good, and if you really want to break down what they mean on a personal level to Inarritu, there might be some meaning there. But I feel like a film should serve more the audience than it does the creator. That's just my take. You know, some of you might have a different take on that and might see value in a different way, but that's just how I feel. Like, for me, if I'm ever making a film, yes, it's for me to some degree, but I'm trying to entertain people who watch it. I want the audience to get something out of it. This is this type of film where, you know, you might see it being studied in film school for the weird imagery. Like, this is the second film involving a fetus that I've seen this year that was super weird. There was a lot of stuff with wombs and babies that I just found like very heavy-handed. It wasn't really smart imagery. It wasn't a smart metaphor. It's very on the nose, and to me it just wasn't working. You know, if you've heard about this film, you know, premiering at Venice and other film festivals, this was very, very critically panned. A lot of critics really despise this movie. Everyone seemed to call it messy, and I've seen a lot of reviews calling it messy, but nothing could really prepare me for how messy this film was. So ultimately, I'm super disappointed in this one. It's crazy because when I think that this is the same director who gave me Amores Perros or 21 Grams or Beautiful or Birdman, it's crazy to see how he's just like almost progressively gotten worse over time. He used to explore these huge ideas very gracefully and have so much nuance to his narratives, and they used to be plot based, and this is the complete opposite of that. I'm all for directors getting experimental. I'm all for exploring new ideas, but when it comes in the form of this, it doesn't really work for me. It ended up being one of the most disappointing films of the year, unfortunately. You know, there's a really interesting scene where the main character, his son, basically tell him, like, no one gives a crap about your roots. Everyone knows we all come from somewhere. It's not worth telling that story. And I feel like Inarritu kind of tongue-in-cheek saying this, but at the end of the day, I feel that way. I feel like I'm tired of seeing these stories about the roots of the directors when a lot of them come from like a privileged background, or a lot of them are just like looking back on their lives from a position of being multimillionaires. It almost feels like there's a huge disconnect in terms of how they're presenting themselves. There's another scene where a critic character in the film is watching one of the films that the character creates, and he basically tells him it's pretentious, it's Waneric, it's all made to cover up your mediocre writing, a mishmash of pointless ideas. Half the time I wanted to crack up, and the other half I was dying of boredom. That's in the script. I read that, and that's really an excerpt of dialogue from the script. That's literally exactly how I feel about this movie. It was half super laughable, like I didn't know if I was supposed to laugh or if I was supposed to get something meaningful out of it. Every single point of analysis to me ends up coming like super phony, super surface level ideas, and unfortunately it just didn't click for me. Now, it may have clicked for you guys, and that's fully okay. You know, this is the beauty of film criticism and opinions. We're all gonna have a different take most of the time on films. But unfortunately, this is one of the bigger disappointments of 2022 for me. So with that being said, that's my review of Bardo. Again, I'm really sorry for this harsh take. It really rubbed me the wrong way. But ultimately, I have way more reviews coming for you guys, and I have some of my favorites of 2022 that I'm very eager to speak about. So please like, please subscribe. If you dislike and you want to comment about how I'm wrong about this movie, please do. I would love to discuss it in a healthy way. See, that's why we're here, right? We're all trying to talk about films, and we're all trying to gain more knowledge about the films that we're watching and share the love for cinema that we all have. So with that being said, I'll catch you guys on the next one. My name's Nova. Talk to you later.